Pedwin is standing outside the closed chambers on one of the upper floors of the courthouse in Mason's Rest. You can't make out the full conversation, but now that you're closer, you can start to hear a little bit more. Make a perception check, please.
I'm so perceptive.
Now you gotta use... Do you have to say you're using your portent before or after you make the roll?
Before.
Uh, you can't make out full words, but from the general tone you can hear that the two people that are talking don't really like each other. They are having an argument back and forth. It's not getting out of hand, but people are, speaking forcefully. The door is thrown open, which catches you off guard because you didn't hear any footsteps leading up to it. And as it's tossed open, there is a person in, and this is the first time you're seeing this individual. They're in a large white robe, but it's trimmed with kind of like a gold-colored fabric finish around the hem of the hood and around the edges of the cloak as it wraps around.
It's the Pope!
I was going to say the Queen.
The
Elf Queen.
There's not a lot of, finery to it. It's not showing a lot of... there's no jewels or anything that would indicate that it belongs to royalty, but it's a very well-made robe. And it also seems kind of thick, almost like it's meant to withstand travel. And the bottom of it does seem to have a bit of dust and indications that it's not that it was transported through a carriage, that this person walks wherever they go. And as the figure moves forward, you can see these kind of large triangles that come down from the neckline that kind of slowly radiate outwards and get closer and closer to horizontal the closer it gets to the shoulder. There are only a couple of small charms, or in small vertical strings, that seem to hang almost like hair out of the hole with the hood in it. And this figure steps out and doesn't even pause when they're walking by, the two of you. You just hear it sounds almost like a sharp exhalation, kind of like a snort, but there's very little reverberance to it. It's almost like a whistle, but a low one. And you hear the familiar voice of the orb holder from within the room call out to the jailer. Bring him in, please.
Remind me who the orb holder is?
The orb holder is the guy whose house you attacked.
Ah.
Or I should say broke into.
Well, broke into, then attacked. I did physically attack the house.
You did. Strangely enough, though, you didn't physically attack anybody. You just attacked the house. The most aggressive action you did was put people to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
And
aren't I a nice guy?
Oh, so nice.
Bombs around the room.
Yeah, that was a little bit on the destructive side. So as you walk into this room, it's different from the room you were questioned in before. It's much smaller. It's more like an office or a... Well, not so much an office, kind of like a foyer or a meeting, like an antechamber before you go into a more official office. And there is a small table with a couple of chairs set in it. And one of them is seated the orb holder. He nods to the jailer, and the jailer steps outside the door and pulls it shut, but not in a very rapid way. You get the impression that he's standing right behind that door. You are standing in a carpeted room. There are drapes opening out onto the window, and the morning sun is casting a fairly sharp angle into the room, and some of it is landing on the back of the chair and the shoulders of the orb holder, who is sitting there looking at you, and you are standing there looking at him.
Hi.
Hi. I took your advice. I looked through the objects that we had confiscated from you and your companions. You told me before that you were here looking for dangerous magic.
Essentially.
Yes, in one of the books that you had, the one you mentioned, a man named Rambaldi. When I spoke to him, he said he had never heard of you, that he had severed all ties with the Far Maddening College quite some time ago.
Oh boy!
And then I found this. And he reaches into a small envelope that is sitting on the table next to him, and he pulls out an old tattered note that looks very familiar to you.
Is it the one we found on the ship?
It is the one that you found with the boot.
The boot.
When
Ah,
you
yes, the
when you
boot.
grasp into the darkness, hoping to find an axe, and you got a boot.
I'm still distracted by the fact that I found Rambaldi so quickly. And completely by accident.
Now you tell me you're searching for dangerous magic. And yet you've come here. According to reports, you've caused some form of harm, not just in this city, but in the Crossroads as well. Strangely enough, you left Verdale peacefully enough. And now I find this. And his voice, the tone in it shifts downwards a little bit as it kind of darkens. You tell me you're searching for dangerous magic, and I tell you that you are posing a greater risk to the safety of this island than anyone else that has come here.
I wouldn't say I'm searching for dangerous magic. That seems a little strong.
Then explain this. And he holds up the note.
That I
There
took
is nothing
from,
good that comes from this.
That specifically I took from Mr. Buttface, whatever his name is again, I forgot.
Burnley?
Burnley, yeah. Burnley.
That's very convenient, don't you think?
Well, you accused me of using it before I could tell you where it came from.
It was found on your person.
Yes, because I took it from Burnley.
Right.
Get Mr. Truthseer in here.
Oh, that will come. But in the meantime, and he, after having stood up to
Wait,
indicate this,
didn't Burnley take of that stone relic? That stone thing?
You don't know if anything was taken. What you remember from seeing that stone is it was broken into pieces, and when you reassembled it, there was a circular part that was not in the stone, a circular hole in the stone. And that is what you remember from that stone. You remember the island was laced with magic.
Yep. Can I want to bring that up specifically with him, with Mr. Orbholder. I want to ask if he's seen something that would fit that description of circular, stony, magic-y taken from Burnley.
He stops for a moment. He looks out the window in front of him. Those are a relic of this island's history. Something that is not to be trifled with. Now you will find this out when the trial begins, but I know it now. That you were on that island.
Yeah.
You were one of the only ones seen there. And this happens to be the same day that this stone falls to ruins.
What?
You said it yourself, you found it in pieces.
Yeah.
And I tell you that that stone should stand for longer than anything else on this island. Now, if it has been destroyed, that is a sign that is very worrying to me.
All we were doing was following Burnley.
You keep talking of him like he's the greater threat.
I'm not saying he's the greater threat, I'm saying he is a threat.
There has been nothing threatening about him. He came to me
Then why do you have him
asking
locked
to
up?
serve the temple, because I don't believe him. But when I must examine what I know, when I must look at what is truth in front of me, I do not see a threat from that man. I do see a threat from someone who tries to burn down trading camps and barging into homes.
Attempted burning down.
Successfully, according to sources.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Large fires that were only very nearly controlled,
Oh, so
but
it wasn't...
coincide with your fleeing from the crossroads. This matters not. All will be revealed during the trial. On that note, the answers you provide during that trial will help to very much decide for me what will become of you on this island.
Do I know where I am in the city?
Yes, you do. You are...
Going to the map.
You are in this building right here.
Okay.
That is the courthouse.
What is in this room?
The room that you're in right now has just I'm going to say like a dark green carpet with kind of yellow trim around the sides. There is a small end table, a couple of chairs, one of them that the orb holder was previously occupying. You can't see the table right now because he's standing away, facing away from you, looking out the window. There are various bookcases and a couple of pieces of art hung up around the walls. There is nothing in the materials they've used to construct it. There are doors behind you on your right that you came in through, and on the left-hand wall.
No windows?
There is one. There's one right in front of the orb holder.
Okay. Is it... how is it closed?
It's not a window that can open. It's just sealed.
How thick is the glass?
It's probably not very thick. Well, you know what? Make a perception check. Oh, you're so perceptive, Joe.
I'm so perceptive.
You take a look, and looking at the wooden frame of the window, it looks maybe quarter of an inch thick glass. but from what you can see, although it's kind of hard because of your height and the height of the window frame, but you can't see any like treetops or anything. So you get the feeling that, and you know from having taken a large staircase up, that you are not on the ground floor. You are second story minimum, like second story of a big building.
That's fine. I can work with that. So it's just me and the guy in the room alone, right?
And the guard is outside the room.
Outside the room.
Yes.
Now I'm trying to remember, do I have anything affixed to my body that's preventing me from using magic?
Nothing is affixed to your body that's preventing you from doing magic. However, you are still manacled, so your hands can do nothing but point down because they are chained to what binds your feet together.
So I wouldn't be able to cast sleep.
Do you have to, like, how do you, or what are the casting requirements for sleep?
Let's take a look-see. VSM. So, verbal, somatic, and material. I assume do I still have my arcane focus?
Yes, you still have your focus. I said that before, so I'm not going to retcon it.
So it would be up to you whether or not I can cast sleep on the somatic.
You know what? I'll say that you only really need to like indicate with your hands where it's going. So yes, you could cast sleep.
Could I point my fingers at him?
Yep. Your fingers are not bound by any way. Your wrists are bound, and they're bound by a length of chain, maybe half a foot long, and then that same kind of chain binds your ankles, and then the two manacles are bound together by a short length of chain. So you can't raise your arms up past your hips, but you can move your hands.
I'm going to cast sleep at second level, because this is going south.
On the orb holder?
Yup.
Okay, cast sleep.
Then cast, and then roll an additional 2d8. So that's 37 health.
Okay. So 37 health. So
The
you
answer for everything in the
Yep.
cast sleep.
I didn't take invisibility, so
So you wave your hands around and you mutter a small incantation, and
this can go absolutely horribly.
you release the arcane magic at the orb holder. You see him shift slightly to the side as if momentarily losing balance, and then shakes his head. And you see him pull back the clothing on his left arm, and you see there is a very fine bracelet attached to his arm.
Damn, I should have cast Detect Magic first.
The metal it's got gold trim, but there's a very, very high luster silver, or a silver colored metal that actually runs as the main body of this bracelet, and affixed to the center of it is a large white opal, and it glows faintly and then fades away. And you hear a small chuckle out of the orb holder. He turns around and drops the material covering his arm, and once again the length of his robe covers up the bracelet. It will take more than that.
I'll come back later.
You will stay right there. You have shown me that you certainly do not give up.
Sounds about right.
And perhaps while rash, you are more than a little resourceful. I will tell you what. Depending on what is uncovered during this trial, it will decide what becomes of you on this island. I would very much like to come to understand what has happened to the Standing Stone in Verdale. I would like to understand why each of you has come here. And depending on your answers today, it will decide if I look upon you favorably or as someone that needs to be kept on a tight leash.
You mean a small cell?
We'll see about that.
I think he means tight leash by.
He beckons to the jailer, who then opens the door. Warden, please take him back to his cell. What did you say?
So there was the door open?
No, the door was shut when he finished saying that. Did you want to say something in response to him?
No, I was just confused by your use of the word beckon.
Oh, well, he's just calling out loud enough
Okay.
that the guy on the other side of the door can hear him. So the door is opened. He says, Warden, please return this man to his cell.
They have a warden for 8 jail cells?
They have a warden for this courthouse, apparently. The other members of the tribunal are nearly here. Our jurors are nearly assembled. Have these men brought to the courthouse in 2 hours, and we will begin our trial. The warden acknowledges the command of the orb holder and gently tugs at your arm, indicating you should probably follow him.
As parting words, I say to the orb holder, if you ever need a nice nap, you know who to call.
As you're being brought out, you swear, like you wouldn't be able to confirm it, but you swear you hear a chuckle as you round the corner and the door shuts. You are taken back to your cell down the elaborate staircase, down the portraits that you saw before, and you notice that aside from these 3 which you had witnessed before, on the opposite side of the hall are other portraits that feature various individuals, humans, dwarves, even a dragonborn. And
Oh.
you are brought back down to your cell. Oh, I should probably bring this back down to this. And the warden returns you to your cell, closing the door and relocking it. He leans in and says, I think that went very well, but how about you?
Oh, I'm sure I'll be welcomed back with open arms.
Right then. And he goes back to his desk and returns to his seat. The guards resume their post.
I'm gonna write down on my arm, just using my finger, invisibility, 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 over and over. Alright, so you guys have about 2 hours in the cells. Do you want to talk to anybody, do anything during that time? Or can just wait it out?
I was just gonna wait it out.
Sorely lacking our new friend.
His intro's coming up.
No worries.
Let's get in on that then. Full steam
Okay.
ahead.
2 hours pass without incident.
Oh, that's
There's-
a first for Pedwin.
And as a series of guards are brought down to help take all of the prisoners from their cells, and they lead them up and
Flint.
up up past the same statue that you've passed several times now. And instead of taking a staircase up this time, you just walk across the lobby past the statue down to a very large stone hall. The roofs in the hall are about 15 feet high. They come to a rounded ceiling, like all the pillars kind of meet to support the roof via these stone trellises. And they come to a very large foyer. and there are double doors on the right and the left side of this, on the opposite side of the room that you've been led into.
No!
You okay there, Steva?
Why would you link something like that?
Oh my god, what the fuck? So, the you're brought into this lobby, this foyer, and more individuals are brought in. There are a number of just seemingly random civilians that have come in off the street. Apparently, the court proceedings are open to the public, and they all seem to be slowly congregating here. As you can hear in the distance, the sound of a bell tolling back and forth. Ding 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 ding. Not like a large church bell, but more like one that is being held in a person's hand, like a town crier. And you hear kind of muffled yelling. And as all the people amass, all the townsfolk are coming in, and they're noticing the 4 individuals that are in chains. And there's a few kind of hushed whispers, and people are kind of looking back and forth and talking amongst themselves as to who and what all of you might be doing here. The sets of double doors open, and some of the guards of the city come in, and you recognize them by their tabards, which have the symbol of a hammer laying down on its side. And there are 2 swords and 2 spears that are emblazoned above the hammer on the tabard itself, and that appears to be the symbol of the military class of the guards in this city. You're all brought forth into what is the courtroom. There are small raised wooden benches for individuals on either sides of the room. There are windows at the back that are about 12 or so feet off the ground, and the rest are very tall windows that extends to the ceiling, which is maybe 30 feet up. The whole room is made of stone. And all the walls are made of stone as well. There is a small octagonal depression that is in the center of the room, and on it inside of it are a number of gold inlaid designs and silver and other just kind of ornamental structures that are in this small octagonal depression in the center of the room. There is a large, rounded, semicircular. It's a desk, but it comes up about like 8 or 9 feet off the floor. And seated behind it are the orb holder, a similar-looking individual to the one you had seen before, who healed you after you had been brought in for questioning, and who cast the spells when you were being questioned initially.
Ooh.
And you are kind of flanked by guards on either side as you are all brought into this room.
They're attacking us?
Nope.
No jury, no crowd.
Oh, the crowd was outside.
No crowd inside.
Not at the moment. It appears that you guys are being brought in first.
Are
So the
those-
guards are moving in.
Are those seats in the middle, or is that supposed to be a chandelier thing above us?
Those are designs that are in the floor. So the guards are kind of keeping in time with you. And they lead you towards the center, and they place each of you on one of the 4 circular plates that are embedded in the floor.
Burnley have in his hand?
He doesn't have anything in his hand. It's just
His
that's the
dick.
model.
That is very long.
It's got a huge, huge member.
It's gray.
It's a Goliath member.
Is it like when Swift Panda took that troll one?
I don't know what you're talking about because that game and this game don't coincide. So as the doors open and you look around, you can see all of these features. It's about noon now, so the light is being cast directly at you guys from the windows of the courtroom. And you can just make out through the back of the center window the tip of the broken stone peak that forms the kind of plaza, if you will. No, wait, hang on. That doesn't make sense. No, you can't see that thing outside of there. Never mind. It's behind a different wall. Okay, you can see the stone peak. At which point the other set of double doors opens up and a number of the townsfolk and the crowd start to file in. And they begin to line up along the back wall. And even filling in some of the space behind the benches on either side of the room. There are also additional guards that bring in some individuals that have been kept separately, and they bring them in from the side of the room to the left-hand side where there is another large set of double doors. And behind these guards are 6 individuals. You don't recognize any of them at the moment. But they seem to be, for the most part, normal townsfolk. One of them is dressed in some finery, so you suspect that he's likely a merchant of some sort. One of them kind of looks just like one of the regular farming class that you saw when you were in Verdale. One of them looks like one of the loggers that you saw when you were at the crossroads. And amongst them is also, there's different races. One is an elf who appears to be some kind of like a hunter. So he's in just some basic leather armor, and following at his feet is a cat that nobody seems to be paying any attention to. The individuals are guided by the guards to take up positions in the benches. The elven individual walks in front of the assembled group over towards one of the benches where he is positioned on a raised platform overlooking the courtyard. Well, it's not a court. It's that's the wrong thing. Okay, so he's positioned along with the other individuals that he entered the room with, overlooking the 4 of you in this octagonal depression.
Oh, so he's a member of the jury.
He is a member of the jury, from what you can tell. Mindardus, as you walk into the room, you enter the courtroom that you've never actually been in before, shortly after the rest of the townsfolk and the general public have been allowed access. And you are instructed by the guards to take the position they assigned you in one of the benches for the jurors on either side of the hall.
All right, I do.
The orb holder stands up and he is positioned high enough that you can see him over top of even this, exceptionally long desk. The whole thing is set up to create this kind of looking down upon the individuals they're in the center of the room, as if, the focus is on them. And he raises his hands up. For only a few short days have the individuals that you see before you, and again, Mindardus, for the first time you're seeing these individuals. You see a gnome in a small set of robes with very, very pink hair kind of sticking out at different angles.
Neon pink.
You see a very large human who's a little bit, I think, over 6 feet. And he's just a very, very built guy. You swear that the manacles they've got on him they're a couple sizes larger than the ones you see on most people. These are some big, thick chains that are trying to hold this guy.
6'6".
There you go, 6'6". Behind him is another human, a little shorter. He's got dark black hair and brown eyes. And he appears to be in more robes than armor or anything that's really combat ready at the time. You see him, he's clutching in his hands a small... Well, you only see the chain that's kind of disappearing into his hands, but you assume that there is a symbol there, and his eyes are closed, and he's just kind of muttering to himself. There is also a dwarf in the back corner who is standing around, not saying a damn thing, and apparently quite content to stay that way. He's just kind of looking around at everything, taking in his surroundings. So the orb holder then addresses everyone and says, "Good people of the city of Mason's Rest, I bring before you 4 individuals. These men have only just come to our shores. And in that time, they have crossed some of you, assaulted some of you, and provided no explanation for their actions. It is for their rash and thoughtless choices that they stand before us now."
I was talking, but I forgot to press my push to talk.
Oh, what were you saying?
Yet, and then... Yet to explain themselves, and then only slightly to injured.
So, as this address is going out by the one of the individuals who runs this city, there's the occasional interjection of a small gnome voice as he's going through this address, and every so often you hear, in the brief pauses in his conversation, you hear, "Yet." We begin the trial. I have spoken to representatives from each of the cities that have encountered these individuals. And at this point, the doors the doors to the left side open up, and out steps a man that is dressed in very nice robes. And you don't see a horn, but you hear in the background a very small, like, as if, there's one guy who's just very rapidly, like, playing this instrument to somehow announce this person's entrance. And he walks in, his hands across his hips, and just kind of strides in, looks about, and you see some of the other townsfolk. They begin to whisper amongst themselves at his arrival.
Bing.
Hmm?
Bing. He hasn't got shit all over him.
What?
I still couldn't hear what you said, Steve-O.
But it's the king. He hasn't got shit all over him.
Well, taking a look at him, you don't think he's the king, because a king would probably be announced with a little bit more ceremony. This is just a noble of significance somehow.
Good for 1 2.
Exactly. I'm just going to add something in for him.
I'll be right back in like 30 seconds.
Okay.
almost looks like a pea. As in a pea in a pod. He's a pod person!
Oh my goodness. He's not a pod person.
I don't trust you anymore.
You just had a bad dream, okay?
My seed box is so slow.
Hmm?
My seed box is slow.
Alright, I'm back. And I heard someone screaming about pod people.
One guess as to who that was.
Joe?
No, it was Andrew.
Yep.
Okay, so
Playing with us.
this guy walks in. Did somebody mention the orb holder of Verdale?
Have we met this person?
No, you haven't. It is at this point, though, that Burnley, who has ceased his prayer at this point, looks over with recognition and almost a little bit of relief, which is the first time you've seen that on his face at all today.
We're fucked!
The orb holder at the top of the desk, orb holder Ray, he says, "No, I did not summon you. But now that you're here, you may as well get on with it. You have brought forth the individuals that have been in contact with the accused. And this other individual, this noble in the green, he says, yes, I've brought them." And he extends his hand to the door that he entered from, and through the door come a few individuals that you recognize.
Old?
We're so fucked. I know where you're going with this.
So, you recognize the keeper of the temple that's in Verdale. There is one of the boatmen that you guys encountered when you were on the island. There's the blacksmith Mobby, the dwarven individual that you met. It was actually, I think, probably the first person you talked to when you first came here. You meet the general goods store owner, his half-brother Bull. Not his half-brother, his brother-in-law. I keep making that mistake. Brother-in-law. The tavern keeper, an old man with a walking cane who... Big Mo, you're the only person that recognizes him. He's the guy who sold you the horses.
Oh, right. Yep.
And
I can't remember. Did I overpay him?
You overpaid him by a little bit, yes.
Okay.
But you did wake him up in the middle of the night.
Urgently.
And a couple of guards that... Their tabard is a different color, so you can recognize them as a separate entity. Theirs has a symbol which you do recognize because it's also on the noble in green. It's on a brooch that holds his cloak together around his shoulders. And it is a tree that half of it is in bloom and half of it is withered. And they arrange themselves in front of the octagonal depression that you're in.
Octagonally?
No, they're just in a line. And the orb holder in the green, he then waves his arms again in an overly ceremonial manner. "I have brought them before you, Ray. Please, let us have your questions." You can see on Ray's face, you see this like roll eyes expression, but he closes his eyes before it's really noticeable that he's done it, because he doesn't want to create a bad impression in front of so many people. He addresses each of them and says, "Have you seen the individuals you see behind you?" And they turn around, and After each of them look at you, and the old man, he's got a squint for a little bit, and he adjusts his glasses, and then a moment of recognition, and he doesn't make any sounds, but you see this kind of like "oh" face show up.
I smile
As-
at him.
You can absolutely smile at him. He does a little like wave at you because he does recognize you.
I can't wave at him. My hands are bound.
Your hands are bound, so you can kind of wiggle one arm back and forth a little bit.
Not that friendly. Like,
And
it's just
the
a
orb
smile.
holder then addresses all of them again and says, "Then speak plainly and truthfully. But first," and he motions to the individual on his right-hand side, who is a dwarf in a green robe with a very bright white overlay across it. So it's kind of a tiered effect. So the underlayer is kind of deep green, but the white is thrown over both shoulders, kind of like an exceptionally long scarf. But it also runs down the back for quite a bit.
Where we learn our actions have consequences.
And this individual stands up and he says, "Yes, of course." And he waves his hands around. And you see him muttering an incantation, and some of the crowd are kind of they quickly chat amongst themselves. And the orb holder at the head of the table raises his hands and says, "Be at peace. This is but to ascertain whether or not we are being told the truth. This magic is of no harm to anyone." And that seems to allay the concern of some of the crowd, which is good because the guards were shifting around a little nervously with the increase in activity. Okay. So I need Pedwin and Big Mo, I need you to make, I think it's a charisma check. Let me just double check.
Check
the spell.
or saving throw?
I'm just gonna double check the spell. Give me a second.
This is gonna go great for me.
It is a charisma saving throw.
Oh. Oh, I thought that was me. Oh. I didn't click.
Didn't you click?
Oh, okay. It didn't register.
I thought it's the
All
one
right,
right
I'm gonna
above
take your
mine.
first one, Joe.
Yeah.
Whoa, is that a 0?
Yep.
Wow.
It's a natural 1 minus 1.
Yeah, his modifiers. Wow. That is the first critical fail of the night, guys. Congratulations, it's out of the way.
Thanks for the portent, Joe.
No problem.
Okay. So you will be unable to lie. Either of you.
Completely
We're-
unable to lie.
We're unable to lie, or they'll be able to tell if we lie.
Oh, hang on. You know whether each creature's in.
So that would be they know when we lie.
Until the spell ends, a creature that enters the spell area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn, they must make a charisma saving throw. On a failed save, a creature can't speak a deliberate lie while in the radius.
Oh. Deliberate lie?
Yes, it does say an affected creature is aware of the spell and can thus avoid answering questions to which it would normally respond with a lie. Such creatures can be evasive in its answers as long as it remains within the boundaries of the truth.
So
Excellent.
I know when the spell's cast on me.
You, in having to make the charisma check, then you are aware that there is some magical influence on you.
So I'll know when the spell ends.
Yes, you will know when the spell ends.
And they did announce what the spell does, so I know what it does.
Yes.
Cool.
Alrighty, and seeing as Flint isn't here to answer any questions, I'm not even going to bother rolling for him.
His answers would all be, I was in a cave. Was-
Yeah, probably.
I was in a cave.
Hi, Aquaman. Okay, so you've done your rolls.
Yum.
So the individuals from Verdale begin to recount their experiences with you. So when the temple keeper is asked his experiences with you, he describes how
I tried to burn down a stone door.
Pedwin seemed to use fire as a means of communication. He
My
also
mother thought it
noted.
was very cute.
Hmm?
My mother thought it was very cute.
You hear a couple of snickers amongst some of the townsfolk. Jorel kind of finishes by saying that he doesn't think that they're bad people, but he certainly questions their actions and the rashness to them. And you hear a kind of a murmur of assent from the collected crowd. The boatman speaks about interacting with the two of them with Big Mo and Pedwin on the small island the morning that you were in Verdale.
Is that the one where we just dove into the water instead of renting a boat?
Yes, I believe that is what happened. The horsekeeper mentions about how he was disturbed out of his night's sleep after a hard day of work, and his bones ached. Oh, his old bones. Would you believe that he's going to be 97 next month? And
Poor guy, we paid him so much money.
he has to actually be interrupted by the orb holder as he's trying to get to the truth. But he relates the fact that despite being disturbed in his sleep, he was paid in full and in fact a little bit extra by Big Mo, who he indicates over his shoulder. He kind of waves again a little bit.
I can't wave.
The Tavern Keep talks about how Pedwin and Big Mo paid for the room in full and were normal guests, other than the fact that they tore out of the tavern in the middle of the night, but they had already paid for the night, so it didn't really bother him.
Oh, that's good then. No idea we did that.
And the only other person to speak of interacting with any of the party members were the guards of the orb holder, who saw Burnley and conducted him to the orb holder when he wanted to speak to them, or when the two of them spoke, and recalls seeing a gnome and a large human outside of Maclay's house the morning of the Standing Stone being broken. And over the course of this, there are each of the individuals that pass into the area of the spell. You see that they each kind of shudder under its effects, and then they recount their telling of it. So there's no indication of a lie thus far. Everyone seems to have been quite truthful in their experiences with you. At which point, Orbholder Ray stands up and says, "Maclay, perhaps you could shed some light on this situation. You said you spoke with this man, Burnley, was it?" At the mention of his name, Burnley kind of perks up. Yes, Orbholder. Ander Burnley is my name.
What? They're brothers?
What?
Did you say Burnley speaks up, or...?
Yeah, Burnley speaks up.
Oh.
His name is Ander Burnley. And the noble in the green, the orb holder that you heard his name was Maclay, Orb Holder Maclay. He kind of puffs his chest out. "Ah, yes, I spoke to this gentleman on that day. He expressed some interest in serving the temple. He tells me he's a cleric of some sort, a follower of... Oh, what was it? Tellus... Tommy...
The Bellis?
And at which point, Burnley almost kind of bursts, Talos, Talos, I serve the divine Talos. And you can see him once again clutching in his hand his holy symbol. The Orb speaks up again, a little perturbed that he was interrupted. Yes, Talos. I told him that we needed no further staffing at the temple in Verdale. I recommended he come here and volunteer his time at your facility, which I have come to understand is looking for prospective members and staff. It must be very expensive maintaining such a large and auspicious temple, Ray. And at which point he almost starts just kind of directly speaking to Orbholder Ray, who's conducting the trial, as opposed to respecting the fact that it's a trial. Yes. Ray responds to him. Yes, he has already related this story to me. He wishes to serve in the temple. At which point Burnley speaks up for the first time. Yes, I merely wish to avail my services as a cleric and a man of God, that I may bring wisdom and guidance, and I may come to help accept all the peoples of these fair islands, that they may accept the wisdom of understanding that which Talos brings to us. And he begins to launch into this long tirade about how important it is to pay respects to the Storm God. And
I'm gonna lie down and take a nap.
And Pedwin lies down to take a nap. There are again a few snickers of laughter as they see Pedwin do this. There are also a few other murmurs. These ones sounding not quite so jovial, more of a kind of a displeasure with what's being brought up. And at which point, Orbholder Ray puts his hand down to the table and slams it down, and using a magically enhanced voice, he speaks up. Silence! Interrupting Burnley, who's just and then silence! It rings out louder this time, and all the townsfolk are also quiet. I've heard enough of this. What is being presented here is but one version of events. What we know is what can be proven. Knowledge is truth, and I intend to discover the truth of this situation. Bring in the next round of witnesses, and at which point a few individuals walk in through the doors on the left-hand side of the room. The Orbholder Maclay then takes a position at the back of the courtroom. He is standing in front of another one of the large bronze statues of a pair of scales resting on an upturned hammer. And as these witnesses are brought in, you recognize the tabard of the Crossroads. It's kind of a muddy brown with a tan X and a circle around it. So it basically just creates these two overlapping shapes of X and O. They're rather crudely drawn. It kind of doesn't really compare to some of the other tabards that you've seen on some of the other guards, the ones from Verdale and the ones from Mason's Rest, where you are now. And along with the guards with those tabards, you notice Samir, the dark-skinned individual that the two of you had an encounter with in the Crossroads.
Was he the guy who kept the transforming dude in a cage?
Yes. You also see an elf woman who is in purple robes that none of you recognize, but she strolls in as well. and an old man hobbling in on a cane, who, Pedwin, you immediately recognize as the man that was in the well, just kind of sitting there turning the crank to bring the buckets of water up so that the well in the center of town would be continuously supplied.
Uh-oh. Tim, I'm most curious about what he's going to say about us.
And so as they arrive here, the man who cast the spell, the truth spell on the center of the room. Let me just double check something here. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. He moves his hands and utters the same incantation, and this time he actually speaks aloud. He's like, and he says, "In the name of the god Ogma, may the knowledge of what has happened been revealed to us. May the hand of Tyr, the god of justice, bring us to the correct conclusion, a just decision." And the same kind of spell is being cast on this group of individuals that have just come in. And they are asked about their encounters with each and every one of you. As each of them relates their story, the old man talks about how the very nice gnome came in and gave him a break and some time off, even though he didn't think that he was going to get any time off, because Samir had been very upset with him. And this whole time, Samir is just kind of arms crossed, tapping one foot on the floor, until it's his turn to speak, where he goes on and on about how he stepped outside and tried to hire these band of intrepid adventurers that had come into the crossroads and proven their strength in a contest with each other, attracting quite a crowd and proving that they knew what they could do. And as he goes on, he continues his little slightly embellished story. Not untruthful, but he's embellishing a little bit. And when I offered these men a job, they turned me down. As soon as I turned my backs on them, it seems they set themselves about bringing havoc and chaos to the crossroads, which is a very powerful economic engine of these islands. And these men here, although I have not seen this one, and he points to Burnley in the back, you I am not familiar with. But these ones nearly burned the entire thing to the ground. If there is any justice, they will be punished.
So do you want to talk about that guy you're keeping in a cage? Poor boy.
Show me your evidence, gnome.
I'll take your not talking about it as evidence.
I am not the one who is on trial here.
Yet.
I have told you everything that I know of this situation. May I be dismissed?
That's a stretch. That's a bit of a stretch.
Glad to say that if he's not allowed to lie.
Oh, you know what? You're right, because he does know more about that. I guess he can't say that line. Okay. Alright, well, he wouldn't be allowed to say that, so I'm just gonna undo that line.
Would he not... The mechanics of him not being able to say that, would it be he just wouldn't think it, or he would attempt to say it, but it wouldn't come out?
The way I'm picturing the spell working is that he would attempt to say it and it wouldn't come out.
And how would the crowd view such a action is him trying to speak but being stopped.
There are certainly whispers that kind of break out through the crowd. Samir does look around a little bit little nervously. He turns back to the orb holder. You called me here as a witness. I am not the one who is on trial.
Yet.
If I can be of no further assistance, then please allow me to go back to my work.
Can you be? Yes or no?
So you're asking,
I'm asking
Samir?
him, yeah.
He turns on a heel and looks back at you. And looks back at the orb holder. You need but ask me a question, and I must respond with the truth.
Suspicious.
What is it you would like to know, orb holder Ray? Ray leans forward and looks really, really intently at Samir. Oh, apparently this thing did not roll.
Who's
Ray
rolling
again?
what? I want to know. I want to know beforehand, before you roll. I want to know who's rolling what. So I
It
can
would
protect
appear. It would appear that the orb holder is trying to discern whether or not there is more to that he should probe further with Samir.
Portend 16.
He actually rolled a 16.
Fuck. Well, it works out.
He looks real hard at Samir. I would not call what you do in that trading camp of yours work, but do not think for a moment that your actions have gone unnoticed. There will be a time that you stand within that octagon, but it is not today. You are dismissed. And so Samir, the woman in the Samir leaves the room. So have the guards that gave their report of seeing fires break out, and then a group matching the description of Pedwin, Big Mo, a small boy, and a red-headed adventuring woman, all leaving the crossroads, and then from then on they couldn't really keep track of them too well, but they did note all of them fleeing the scene. The fortune teller, or fuck, you don't even know that, but the woman in the purple, she's the only one remaining inside the spell's effect, and she relates the fact that she saw the fires being started, and she saw the individual that left the source of where they came from. And she very, very heavily implies that, Pedwin, you are the one who started those fires. Now, you've never seen this woman ever, so you don't know how she knows this, but she seems to know. After which, a third round of witnesses are brought in. And these are individuals from, and you gather this by the symbols and the tabards that these guards are wearing, and the fact that a number of these individuals you saw face to face. They are some of the staff and the guards that responded to breaking into the orb holder's home. Pedwin, you specifically remember two of these guards because you flung horse dung at them.
They don't remember. They can prove nothing. They got nothing on me.
You can tell that they're very upset by the whole situation, but the report that they give lacks any and all details, so is essentially thrown out as something that's insubstantial. And as they leave, they certainly glare at you. Oh, do they give you the stink eye? The stinkiest stink eye that ever stunk. And some of the other staff members simply talk about how Burnley, when he was brought into the house, he followed the rules, he surrendered his weapon, and he even willingly accepted one of the armlets of magic suppression. As he was brought into the house to speak to the orb holder. There's also the description of how individuals matching the exact description of Pedwin, Big Mo, and Flint broke into the orb holder's house, burned away some of the doors and some of the other pieces of furniture that were in the room, detonated explosives, and otherwise caused a whole scene of chaos, whereby Pedwin held himself hostage and then subverted the guards and then tried to escape, only narrowly being apprehended. And essentially they all relate the story of how you have come to be here and now. These last I won't forget about it either. And these last group of individuals are brought out. And all that's left now are the jurors, the townsfolk, the guards, the men sitting behind the desk, and the accused who stand within the center of the room. The dwarven individual that cast the Zone of Truth spell, he stands up and says, and addresses the accused. You have this opportunity to explain yourselves. Previously, when questioned, not all of you were truthful. You are being given this chance now, within the eyes of the gods and all those assembled here, to state your case, to say what your intentions are, to prove to us that you are not the threat that you have already demonstrated yourself capable of imposing. Speak.
Addressing one of us in particular?
If you want to just take turns, I was just expecting somebody to start.
We had no intention of coming here. We were just on our way to various places in the world when Mr. Butthead Navigator over there led us astray. We wound up having to take refuge on this island.
I do the long drawn out version.
You
Since
certainly can.
I cannot lie, and evidently I cannot lie so bad that I have to tell the entire truth. Go with that.
I am certainly cool with that. Big Mo relates to the story. Do you want me to summarize it? If you want to, go for it. I would rather you do it.
I can't remember everything. Like, I'm gonna go into, like, the finest details and draw it out as long as I can. is the whole point of what I'm doing.
So roughly 35 minutes goes by
I want to make
as
action noises with the battles.
with sword clashes and fireballs and things like that being all their sound effects being whistled and mimicked by Pedwin, much to the amusement of the crowd. Even a couple of the jurors can't help but crack a smile when you describe being thrown back onto a ship by a giant fish ship. And you're in the zone of truth, so you have to be telling the truth when you say this.
And in this story, I'm also going to talk about trying to steal Burnley's axe instead of saying it's my axe. I'm not.
Well, if you go into every detail, you do have to describe how you were trying to steal it.
Yep. Yep.
How is
At
he
which
trying
point
to steal it?
Well, the first time you tried to put him to sleep, which I guess doesn't count as me, but I still say it anyways.
To be fair, he was absconding with, having after setting us like on this bizarre course that leads to nowhere.
And we also talk about how he killed the captain, or we think he killed the captain of the ship.
We're extremely confident that he killed the captain.
Yep.
So when you've all finished your descriptions, Burnley is. It comes time for him to describe his version of events, and he talks about how he was brought onto the ship, about how after leaving Baldur's Gate, the ship was on the course that he had plotted, and over the course of passing by this island was caught up in a storm. He talks about
What?
he talks about the death of the captain, but very carefully sidesteps saying anything about his involvement. He simply mentions that the captain was unwell when the journey was undertaken, and that he died during the journey.
But didn't everyone think the captain was sick until after Burnley left? I'm trying to recall all of this, like when exactly everyone found out the captain had died.
Well, everyone found out the captain died when Burnley called down from, because you guys were having an argument and you were trying to break Holg out of his cell, and then Navigator Burnley called down into the ship to call for the first mate, who is now the captain.
Okay, yeah, okay. For some reason I was thinking like the captain went to go check on him after Burnley escaped. Okay.
I'm gonna make a lot of sarcastic, wishy-washy comments and waffling and flip-flops.
All right, you make a lot of sarcastic, wishy-washy comments and waffling and flip-flops while Burnley goes through his story. Very, very carefully crafted story, which you all know because you know your version of events. Now, he doesn't lie, but he's certainly vague with some details.
Okay, we're not so fucked anymore.
And after he finishes talking about how the storm was rapid and sudden, and they were immediately beset by it, he starts describing the storm with like a really strange reverence. And whereas before he sounded a little nervous, now as he's talking about this and he's recalling the events, you can see he's not even really looking at anybody anymore. He's starting to look up towards the ceiling and just kind of swaying back and forth slightly as he describes the force and the ferocity and the churning of the wind and the darkened skies and all of these details that he's going into.
Did he say anything specifically about the unexpected the storm was?
He did. He talked about how it was set upon them within moments, from very, very, like from calm seas to this just horrible tempest.
Did he say it was unexpected?
Yes, he did say it was unexpected.
Okay.
And he said, he finishes by talking about how he felt that he could hear the storm god's voice, and he was delivered to the shore by chance and good fortune of Talos. And again, it launches into this tirade about, and just starts praising his god's name.
I'm gonna make the crazy sign around my head, twirling finger. Cuckoo.
Some of the children that are they're watching the court proceedings that haven't left over the course of it, again, chuckle at the continued antics of Pedwin, who they all just see somebody of their size and they kind of just assume that it's another kid. You hear like some of them muttering to each other, like, "No, it's a gnome. It's not a gnome. It is a gnome. You're stupid," and just normal childhood banter. Eventually, actually, I'm going to need Actually, I will do this one for Flint. So I'm going to need Big Mo and Pedwin to make persuasion checks. Flint,
Big money,
twice
big
Flint.
money, big money, big money.
Yeah.
No whammies.
They should have given me a portent to get a little higher.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that you're gonna. He doesn't know how you're gonna roll.
Can I do portent on what's his face's
Burnley?
persuasion? Burnley's persuasion.
Okay, so what do you? Which portent are you using?
The 9.
Okay. Well, that was the only one left, right? You raised it up by 2.
Well, shit.
Oh no, Steve. So, for the first time in quite a while, as these events are being described, Flint speaks up and relates to his experience of just being come upon by these strangers and talking about how their band was. They seemed like decent people. He corroborates the story of the boy and his older brother, because up until then, no one had ever supported that version of events. The most that Samir said about it was that he mentioned that he had the bear in the cage, and he suspected that your group was responsible for releasing him. Actually, I think he knew that. Yeah, he knew that your group was responsible for it because you were like, you did it right in his face.
And he yelled at the bear to get back in the cage and stay there.
He did not include that part.
But I did.
But you did, that's right. And basically, he makes a case for his role in events and the fact that, it wasn't his idea to break in, and he certainly didn't set anything on fire. And basically, he makes a pretty reasonable case that he hasn't done anything wrong, and very much kind of wrong place, wrong time scenario. It is at this point, after all the closing arguments, that all 3 of the individuals at the head of the table stand up and address the jurors for the first time. Jurors, it is your responsibility to take what you have heard and decide amongst yourselves. You have been collected from Verdale, the Crossroads, and amongst we here in Mason's Rest. And you must decide now what is to become of the accused.
Please
And
no kill.
points his hand down towards
KO.
down towards the 4 in the center of the octagon. If they are found guilty of these charges, in response to their crimes, they will be sentenced to service to the courts for a duration of your choosing.
I'm not into that sort of thing.
If you should so choose it, if you perceive the threat, they may be incarcerated, or other means of justice may be presented. You, as the individuals they endangered, are empowered with this chance to speak for yourselves to what fate befalls these men. At which point the 6 jurors are ushered out of the room and back through the doors in which they came to the left-hand side.
I sit on the floor.
So let's see here. These leave. And they leave. And Bendardus, you retire to a separate chamber with 5 of the other jurors, who all immediately begin a rapid discussion of all the events that they've heard. Now, you, having been selected as the jury foreman, will be the one to
Please don't kill.
announce what the punishment will be. And amongst all the jurors, there is a discussion of the sentences that were recommended. So there is service to the crown, there would be imprisonment. Only one person speaks of execution, but most seem to agree that execution would not really be within the realm of reason for this crime. They don't think that the orb holder and the master of law in the city would support this idea very well.
Do we have to come all to an agreement, or is it like a majority rules?
Well, you will all come to an agreement, and you're going to present that as the foreman of the jury. So ultimately, it is your decision, or it is not your decision, it is up to you to decide. Do you believe these men? Are they guilty of having committed some crimes against the people of the island? And if so, what their sentencing will be. Whether or not they will be interred as servants of the court, or imprisonment, or punishment of the jury's choosing. Or not of the jury's choosing, but they can make a recommendation to the master of law.
All right. Well, I feel like we have come to an agreement.
And after about 35 minutes or so of discussion, the 6 jurors are brought back into the courtroom. The eyes of each of the 6 meeting the accused as they take their various seats in the benches. And the orb holder Ray then stands up, and there is a kind of hush that falls over the whole room. Jury foreman, are these the accused guilty of the charges that have been laid here? Do you feel they present a threat to the island?
We, the jury, do believe they are guilty.
We're fucked!
There is a murmur of conversation that ripples through the crowd as some people are for this, some people are against this, some people talk about how they didn't do anything wrong, and people start discussing the harm that's been done, and immediately the whole courtroom goes into a flurry of activity. Oh wait, they were supposed to give me a music thing for this. Fuck! Oh, I forgot the whole time.
Wait, so we were all judged together?
There we go. Courtroom music. Okay.
We weren't judged individually, we're judged as the collective.
You were judged as whether what you were being judged on right now was whether or not you were a threat to the island.
Well,
And you have been
okay.
found guilty of being a threat to the island.
This just reinforces my idea that they're pod people.
The orb holder then stands up. What sentence has been agreed upon by the jury?
Well, we feel that they would best serve this island by working for the court.
There is again a murmur of assent that ripples through the crowd. A number of the jurors kind of shake their head, nodding, and there generally seems to be an agreement that this is the most reasonable course of action. That's a perfect time to stop the music. Okay. So The orb holder then nods his head towards the jury foreman and says, "The jury may be seated." When the collective sound of butts hitting chairs. You have been found guilty of the charges arrayed to you, and the sentence imposed by the people of the island of Rudam is a sentence by service. Now I will say this, that I am not satisfied with what we have uncovered here. And I say again, that knowledge is truth, and there is more to know of this circumstance. Therefore, your service to the crown will consist of 1 month.
The crown?
To the court, sorry. Didn't mean to say the crown. The courts. In 1 month's time, you will return here with some evidence, some support, something that we can substantiate, that we can know as to who has caused the events of your being here. What is more, I wish to know what has become of the Standing Stone in Verdale. There is a hush that falls over the crowd. That relic has stood since before I became orb holder of this city, so many years ago. What is more, agents of the courts are responsible for sowing good amongst this kingdom. In proportion to your crimes, you will be performing services for the cities and the individuals that you have caused harm to. At which point, the orb holder Maclay, who's been at the back standing by this bronze statue, "Well, if that's the case, then why not let this one do as he requests? Why not appoint him to the temple? According to the keeper here in Mason's Rest, he was very devout and spent much of the time before coming to see you in prayer and meditation. Surely this holy man will not be held to some menial task. Put his skills to use. In fact, tell you what, I will take him on as an understudy to the temple keeper Jorel in Verdale. Give me this moment." What?
I'm guessing the spell is no longer in effect.
The spell is no longer in effect.
Okay.
But you also note that he is, the orb holder Maclay is doing everything he needs to stay outside the influence of that. I should have made you run an insight check for that, but it's too late now. Ray almost face palms at having to deal with Maclay's just self-obsessed rant again. And with an exhale of exasperation, "Fine. I release him to your care, Maclay. But I wish to know of his comings and goings. What happens to you is what happens to him is your responsibility now. Do you understand me?" Orb holder Maclay walks up and claps his hand on Burnley's shoulder. "Ray, you busy yourself with the comings and goings, the dealings and the operations of the town that you've been in charge with, the town that you've been overseeing for so many years. And you leave Verdale to me. That's my town, and I've brought it to where it is, and I think this man will be a valuable addition."
Well, Verdale's fucked.
Can I stand up and be like, well, if he gotta choose where he goes, can we choose where we go?
Well, he didn't choose where he goes.
But he gotta go where he wanted.
Well, according to what Burnley said, he wanted to work at the temple in Mason's Rest, not the one in Verdale.
But then he went to Verdale to work at the one there, right?
Well, he started there, but then he was recommended by... what was revealed during the investigation is that he was recommended by Maclay to go to Mason's Rest.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. I won't say it then. Misunderstanding.
As for you three, he indicates to Flint. When I've spoken with the authorities in Temec, they have not heard of someone of your name, though they did treat your clan name with some degree of hostility. I do not think you are welcome there. Pedwin and Morris, you two who have done harm to this city will do good for this city. I will have you instilled as agents of the court, and you will report here tomorrow in the lobby of this building before the scales of justice. And we will find something for you to do, some means of repairing the damage you have done. This will be your service. And in 1 month's time, we shall reconvene here, and we shall get to the heart of this matter. If you know of anyone who can shed more light on this story, or what's better, if we could get a first-hand account,
Besides us.
besides the accused, who would clearly act in their own self-interest.
I mean, like Hold?
Hold would be a good example of somebody who has seen some of these events. What is more,
What about Danny Sexbang?
if you could find Danny Sexbang, if you could find Kanye the Giant, and Ray finishes with, and if something could be brought to us, something that the deceased had held in great importance.
Deceased?
Yes, the captain. This man you spoke of, the former captain of the ship you arrived on. His murder, as you claim it. There is more truth that can be discovered here. And at which point you do notice that Burnley, who's been looking kind of smug at the fact that he's not getting in a lot of shit right now, suddenly becomes very, very still. If something can be brought to us, the Master of Law here, and Ray indicates to the dwarf on his right in the green and the white robes, he is a cleric of Ogma, the god of knowledge. Much can be gleaned through his sight. If you can bring to us something that may be scryed upon, we may be able to discover more of the truth of this matter.
Oh, I love scrying.
Then I will charge you with this additional task.
Shit.
If you can bring me something that will prove your version of events, I will accept the truth of what you have said here. And what is more, you will have earned my confidence. Are there any questions?
Nope.
All right, so once again, there is a loud boom that's kind of magically enhanced. This one coming from the Master of Law on the right. Then let this trial come to a close. At which point, one of the guards walks up to Pedwin and places on his wrist a small armlet of a kind of, it's almost like a purple ceramic with a small white opal in the center.
Is this similar to the thing that I saw on Mr. Orbholder's hands or wrist?
Make an intelligence check.
I'm so smart.
You discern that this is a very similar structure, although slightly different design. You do note that the opal on his was much, much larger than yours. And on this one, as it is placed on your wrist, it's almost like wet or moist to the touch.
Ew. So
And-
what is this?
And whereas it was
It was made by Pod People.
it was like kind of solid before, it seems to almost meld and fix very ticely to your skin. And try as you might, you can't seem to remove it.
Let me guess. Ticking time bomb.
The guard who puts it on your wrist and says, "No, it's nothing like that. This here, we can keep an eye on you, no matter where you are.
Signal to the mothership.
And if you go around throwing any more fireballs, we'll know about that too."
I'm gonna cast Firebolt at the ground.
You're going to cast Firebolt at the ground? Okay, I need you to roll a d20.
You know, I want to bring up my Conjure Flame.
The Conjure Flame is a cantrip, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that
Produce Flame, rather.
right. Then the flame pops up in your hand.
Anything happening?
You do notice that the stone in the center of the bracelet has kind of a dull glow, but other than that, nothing seems to be happening.
ET phone home.
All right, so it is midnight. So for the time being, I'm going to call it there. And when we pick this up, we're going to basically you're going to find out what the implications of your sentencing are. You will get a chance to ask details about that thing on your wrist, and basically you're going to find out a little bit more about what it means to be in service to the courts. But that is going to happen on the next session.
Right.
That was fun.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. Sorry this was a little bit like text, or not text heavy, but like dialogue heavy, but I've had to summarize everything that's happened up until now.
Yeah, no worries.
Alrighty.
I'm very impressed with the world you've created.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure some of my coworkers think I'm
On
insane.
fire. Coworkers.
Well, sure, because like I'll be periodically asking them like, "Hey, I need a character name," or "I'm doing this thing," and or like I'll just be fucking running through dialogue in my head, so I'm sure I sound insane just talking to myself every so often. But I don't care because it's fun. Alrighty, my throat is kind of sore. So what are you doing there, Steve-O, to the channel?
I just locked it so we didn't get people coming in. But
Cool. Alrighty. So that is everything for tonight, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
So is there a time that works well for everybody for the next session?
whenever, so long as some surprise doesn't come up, I'll be good to go.
Okay. It will either be this coming Sunday or the Sunday after that, depending on people's availability. So for the time being, it's tentatively either within the next 1 or 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. All right, man.
All right, everybody have a good night. Thank you for joining me.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
User disconnected from your channel.